Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember right. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Greetings, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and as always, I'm delighted that you're joining me, whether live now on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central, where we go out on YouTube and Facebook and X, or maybe you're watching the show archived on one of those sites at a later date, or listening to the show, which drops on Wednesday on pretty much every podcast platform out there. Regardless, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you can believe it or not. I'm normally pretty healthy, right? But I got sick again. I don't know if it bounced back, the cold or flu I had, but it's like twice as bad as it was last time. And my poor little 9-year-old's been hit with it as well. So if I disappear at all tonight momentarily, or I mute my microphone, it's because I'm having a coughing fit or blowing my nose, and none of you want to see or hear that. I'm super excited about this week. We have the Philip K. Dick Film Festival launches in New York City tomorrow. And as most of you know, who are regular listeners or viewers of this network, I have a short film, which is kind of a standalone segment from my upcoming feature documentary, The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers. And the short is called The Shaver Mystery. And I was so delighted when it was accepted into the Philip K. Dick Film Festival. It is a festival that I've watched from afar for years. And not only do I love Philip K. Dick, I love the type of content that this festival shows. It's one of the world's premier science fiction festivals. And I was so looking forward to going to it. Unfortunately, my daughter's mum, my ex-wife, is actually not doing too well. She's in hospital at the moment, so I'm not going to be able to get away at all, unfortunately. But that's the way, I suppose, the cookie crumbles. But I just hope she gets better. So prayers for her. Anybody out there praying, could you please pray for my daughter's mother to get well soon? What I am delighted about tonight is, while I can't get to the PK Dick Film Festival, in a way I've been able to bring it to me and to all of you, because tonight's guest is the organizer of the Philip K. Dick Film Festival, and it's run for over 12 years and is screened in New York, Los Angeles, France, Germany, Amsterdam and Poland, a truly international film festival. The guest is also the co-developer and host of this new sci-fi anthology series, which looks just absolutely amazing, called The Unseen Realm. And the first episode of The Unseen Realm features Edward James Olmos, Keir Dullea, Margot Kidder, Clancy Brown, and Matt Modine. Just an incredible cast. And that Unseen Realm, that will be hitting streaming platforms this summer. But in the meantime, you can catch it online as part of the Philip K. Dick Film Festival this coming week. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to Talking Weird the head of the PK Dick Film Festival, the producer and creator of The Unseen Realm, Daniel Abella.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Man, thank you for coming. Like I said, I'm so glad. I feel like I've got a little bit of the festival with me now. I'm not going to be able to join you guys, so that's great.
Well, at least we'll send you the link online so you can catch it from wherever you are. So at least in spirit, you will be here.
That's fantastic. There's so much I want to talk to you about tonight. I want to talk about The Unseen Realm, which looks amazing. I want to talk about the festival. I want to talk about PK Dick himself, but maybe, and we'll mention it again at the end, but people who want to get to the Philip K. Dick Film Festival or to watch it this coming week, what's the best? And I'll have a link to the festival in the show notes as well. But for people who are just listening or just watching and aren't looking at the show notes, what's the best way for them to see it? What are some of the venues it's at? Where can they get along to watch these incredible films that you're screening?
So those who are in the New York, the tri-state area can catch it live in 3 different venues. The first is going to be at the Producers Club, which is right in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. It's on 44th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. That's going to be Friday night, or mostly Friday day, actually. We're running films from like 2 to midnight. On Saturday, we're doing it at the East Village Cinema, which is at on 12th Street and 2nd Avenue. And on Sunday is in Brooklyn at the Stewart Cinema and Cafe. So I figure between any one of those 3, anyone in New York will be able to watch it, or if you're right outside. Now, for those who cannot make it, there's just geographically not possible. We are offering an online version, kind of an edited online version, starting on Thursday. And where I think about 22 films will be shown then.
Oh, wow. That's excellent. And The Unseen Realm is playing as part of that as well. Maybe that's a good segue to talk a little bit about The Unseen Realm for folks out there.
Well, The Unseen Realm, I know, Dean, you probably remember you've seen, I'm sure you've seen The Twilight Zone. I grew up with The Twilight Zone. I grew up with Outer Limits and Night Gallery and all these amazing shows. And we figured that the one thing that was missing was a program that not only showed shorts, but also did so in a way that created a sense of drama with a personality introducing the show. Because there are certainly online programs out there that do have compilations of sci-fi show. I'm not going to mention any specifically, but you know who they are. And that's fine. But I think that what pulled people in, it was not just the program, let's say whether it be Night Gallery, which is a perfect example, but also the character of Rod Serling. Now, I'm not presuming to be the next Rod Serling, but I will introduce my own kind of personality into the show, make it interesting, throw bits of trivia that they may not necessarily get from watching the movie. So the key to The Unseen Realm is a sci-fi anthology series that features a mix of sci-fi indie filmmakers, as well as some shorts directed by stars such as, say, Matt Modine. So it's a sweet spot where you'll be able to watch the best sci-fi filmmakers out there, indie sci-fi, as well as having some films starring stars such as Edward James Olmos, Keir Dullea from 2001, Margot Kidder from Superman. So in my book, this is a winning combination. And this also offers an opportunity for filmmakers, short filmmakers, to have a forum, because historically, short films have always been discarded or used as simply material to get your feature made. Through our system, through our process, we'll be able to select the best short films and give these filmmakers an opportunity to have their film shown and through major streaming platforms. So right now we're in talks with all the major streaming platforms. So sometime in this summer, they'll be there. They'll be on Amazon, Tubi, Mubi, and so on. But in the meantime, those who are curious can catch it for the next 10 days, starting tomorrow, at the our own Philip K. Dick Film Festival process. So you can just go there and just click Unseen Realm. That will take you to a ticketing page, and once we receive that information, we'll send you a code that will get you directly into our server, so you'll be able to watch the Unseen Realm. There'll be a Q&A at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, and also a recorded version of the Q&A for those who aren't able to watch the live version. But the overall goal of the Unseen Realm is to really showcase the best sci-fi filmmakers, along with some stars, your favorite stars. So we're already working on episode 2, which will probably go live sometime at the end of the year.
Well, that all sounds so great. I'm looking so forward to seeing it myself.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I mean, we over the course of 12 years, we come across some amazing shorts, and they may have a short stay here and there and then disappear. And it's a shame, because a lot of people will really feel reinvigorated by watching these shorts and what they can produce. It's one thing to catch your average sci-fi short from Netflix, and other things do it from indie sci-fi, which has a lot of passion and a lot of desire. And there's a big difference. So we're hoping to create a platform that will showcase amazing sci-fi filmmakers, along with actors that are people are familiar with.
No, I think it's admirable, because the short medium is so important to nurture filmmakers. It's a place where they learn their craft, and even sometimes, as you know, feature filmmakers go back to the short format. But it's not something which most people do have a chance to experience outside of the festival realm and outside of like an occasional streaming thing. But to have something like what you're suggesting, a curated version of some of these fantastic shorts, I can't wait to watch it myself. Now, Daniel, again, I mentioned before, I'm a massive PK Dick fan. I'm assuming you are as well, because you had a festival which is named after him and in honor of him. What got you interested in PK Dick originally? What was your was it a specific book, or was it?
I would say my intro is I came across a book. I've always been a big fan of Borges, the Argentinian writer, metaphysician. He had a habit of writing very short, terse stories that dealt with the transcendental, but still stories, like The Garden of Forking Paths, and so on. So I came across a review by Ursula Le Guin saying that PKD is our own homegrown Borges. So from that moment on, I was hooked. I said, "Wow, I gotta read this guy." And so I started with the newest books. I mean, so that is most recent in his chronology, which the latest one is in his chronology, which was VALIS, Transmigration of Timothy Archer, the Divine Invasion, Radio Free Albemuth, and so forth. And I started reading backwards, but when I got reading VALIS, I was hooked. I mean, this is. In fact, I just recently picked up another copy. I think I might actually have it right here, but no, I don't have it in my other room. But it has a feature of this little young boy or girl that's maybe like 5 or 6 years old, and I thought this is a perfect image of what VALIS would be like, in person. So I'm very much impressed, and I've also had very much interested in parallel realities and that sort of nature. So when I came across PKD, he says, why not have a PKD festival? Because it'd be more than any other writer, he sort of encapsulates, embodies the transhumanist movements, old parallel realities, paranoia, distrust of the world, etc. So I approached the daughter of PKD, of Philip K. Dick, in 2012. And I asked her I suggested, and she said, why not? Yeah, sounds like a good idea. So the rest is history. We started in 2012 with the premiere of Radio Free Album Month, which is the only true indie sci-fi adaptation of Philip K. Dick's novel. All the
That's
others have
great.
been Hollywood versions, and it's basically we've always do well. Every year comes we do well. We've had people, directors, writers. We have amazing group of people for over the last 12 years. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, Radio Free Albemarle is such a great film, great book as well. I actually screened that in Sydney, Australia, when I still ran festivals there. I used to run a festival there called Fantastic Planet, Sydney Sci-Fi and Fantasy Film Festival. We screened that, and we have, I think the director and the writer team came. Anyway, it's a fantastic movie. People should seek that out. I haven't looked recently, but I'm guessing it's on Prime or it's on Tubi or somewhere. Do you know where people can see that movie these days?
Honestly, I don't know. I think the director is very just limits it to a certain. I don't think it's on Prime. Last
Okay.
time I checked, but I could be wrong. But a year or so ago, it wasn't there. So everybody's got their own way of getting the work out.
I would love. I think I read somewhere that you said you would love to see an adaptation of VALIS. I've longed to see that as well. I always had a dream that one day I'd be able to make it, and my conceit was I would have two directors. I would have a director make the movie VALIS, which appears in the book, and I would have halfway through they go into the movie, and then for the next hour you watch the movie that PK Dick wrote about that the characters see, and then you would come out the other end and they dissect the movie. But that book that's one of my favorite novels. It's such a powerful science fiction piece, but it's also so potent because it's semi-autobiographical. It's about some of PK Dick's own supernatural or paranormal experiences with an entity that he called variously VALIS or Zebra. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those experiences,
Sure,
because
yeah.
I know that type of stuff would fascinate our audience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what sets PKD apart from other sci-fi writers is that he called himself a fictionalizing philosopher, and a lot of the material he talks about is material he experienced and embodied. So back in Philip K. Dick was a writer who certainly suffered from all kinds of challenges. He was agoraphobic. He might have had social anxiety disorder. He came into being. He started writing the late 50s and throughout the 60s, and he was certainly a man of his time. I mean, came through a period when there were the amphetamines were in big use, and one of the reasons he took amphetamines simply was to keep up with the pace that he was required to write in order to make a living. He was being paid pennies per word, so it made it impossible to just write your normal maybe 2 or 3 pages a day. And in fact, if you look at this in the number of books and novels, he wrote 44 novels and 121 short stories, all in a period of about maybe 15, 16 years, which is an amazing output. And a lot of it was driven by the use of amphetamines. So it's not like he became a junkie, as people like to think. In fact, according to Phil, he may have taken LSD once. He definitely used to a lot of amphetamines. So was Ayn Rand took a lot of amphetamines. Fidel Castro took a lot of amphetamines. I'm sure there were a lot of people there who were on that substance. So it's no big deal. But Phil did have issues, certainly challenges. I think part of it may have had to do with his that sense of loss. See, he had a twin sister that died shortly after he was born. And he felt like the other half of his was missing. And throughout the years, he talks about this dark hair girl who shows up in his novels. And I believe that's probably what his sister would have looked like, according to him. So the VALIS 2374 experience has to do with a series of experiences he had February and March of 1974. Here he is waiting for a prescription medicine for his impacted tooth. And someone knocks on the door. He opens the door, and there is a young woman, who has the medicine. But he looks at the pendant, and it had the symbol of the fish, the ictus fish. And from that moment, a pink beam shoots out of the pendant, hits him on the forehead, And the next thing is that he finds himself in first century Rome. And when he woke up from that experience, he continued to see parallel, sort of two worlds, one interspersed within the other. It's almost like a transparency of the experience. He would see this real physical world, but he would also see the ancient temples of Rome. So that experience stayed with him for a couple of years. It kept changing during the course of that time. But the original experience he had, he felt that he was in first century Rome. And the idea was that as he being an Episcopalian, he thought that perhaps it had to do with the concept of how Jesus had said that a generation shall not pass before the Son of Man returns. So I figured that once the second temple gets sacked and destroyed, essentially history stopped. And from that moment on to the present, we'd be living in a simulation, basically allowed by God, so that Lucifer can work his ways to deceive people into thinking this is the real world, when in fact the real world is outside this outside this simulation. Which Philip K. Dick called this the Black Iron Prison, when he had references to the empire never ended. And some people might even think that's true. I mean, with the new Caesarism that we're seeing here in the States, there's almost a return. But according to him, that's part of history. It never changes. The revolutionaries become the new tyrants. It's a kind of virus that has infected humanity from the beginning. But he felt that there was a way out of the virus that was basically through the VALIS transmission. That the VALIS transmission came in to essentially awaken people up to the reality that this world is not what it pretends to be. Now, I interpret that as a reworking of the Holy Spirit or some other spiritual dimension that Phil, but he used scientific terms. He used zebra and VALIS, and at some point Phil was also started to flirt with this spaceship floating around. Now, my interpretation of all these interpretations has to do with the initial experience being as pure as possible. And then later his left brain starts overlaying interpretations as to the actual experience itself. So I do believe that the closest one is the simulation. We're living in some sort of simulation. And what's really interesting is that there have been some writers, one of them is Jean Gebza, who spoke about the integral mind, kind of a new mind that's coming into being. And according to him, space and time will collapse into this dimension where he refers to as the integral mind, where you'll see a transparency of reality, one overlaying another. And that kind of strikes me as to what Phil experienced back in 1974. There certainly is by no means unusual. I mean, other people around that period spoke about, for instance, John C. Lilly talked about at one point that we were, John C. Lilly did take a lot of ketamine, so it may have been part of the problem, but he wakes up terrified from a dream that he felt that in the future would be absorbed by the SSI, the solid state prison. Essentially a computer world that would essentially enslave us. So if you look around what's going on in people's obsession with technology, that's really not such a far idea. Neither it's the simulation that PKD talks about. Neil Tyson says, yeah, there's more than a 50% chance we live in a simulation. But it begs the question, which scientists never want to ask because they pretend to be so smart, right? Well, who is the designer? Doesn't that fit the idea of God? I mean, anyone who could create an entire universe would probably be someone of a godlike being, wouldn't that? But of course, they don't talk about that. They talk about some kind of great architect. So it's kind of evading the ultimate issues. But Phil was not afraid to deal with that, the ultimate issues that confront our humanity, which we sooner or later have to deal with. And if we don't, then we become more susceptible to the technology, to the temptation of technology. We have to understand the human condition is of contingency. And any desire to resolve the issue through something outside ourselves is bound to fail, whether it be a tyrannical government or whether it be the latest app. We have to find the answer by connecting ourselves with the absolute. Various traditions talk about it, not just Christianity, um, Buddhism, Shinto. All the traditional religions say that their path, it, there is a way out, but it's not through the world. The world is a place of deception, or at least of appearances. So Phil was part of that in my book. He's part of the lineage of people who have spoken about that, this eternal struggle to understand who we are. What makes him special, he didn't write philosophy books, which put most people to sleep. He embedded that information within his short stories. And I think that's a lot more subversive and a lot more powerful than just writing a dissertation like Schopenhauer or Hegel's Phenomenology of the Spirit. Who reads Hegel's Phenomenology beyond the hardcore academics? But the idea of a simulation, when introduced through sci-fi, is able to access the large groups of people that really are more likely to benefit from its understanding.
No, I love all of that. There's so much to unpack as well. I've always been so impressed that PK Dick's experiences and the way that he understood them and wrote about them very much fit into those older traditions that you're mentioning, things like Neoplatonism, things like Gnostic Christianity, the idea that this world that we inhabit, that we reside in, isn't the ultimate reality, that there's a bigger reality beyond that. And the idea for PK Dick that somehow VALIS, whether it was a living plasmate or whether it was, a satellite from Sirius or whether it was a Russian psyop, somehow it was trying to break his conditioning and break his preconceptions. And one of the things I love most about PK Dick, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this as well, is sometimes he seems, and I think it makes what he says more important and more potent and more believable, is he seems to vacillate between what it is. Is it really three-eyed aliens from Sirius? Is it really God? Is it really, I'm somehow the victim of some, psyop? What is it? But that kind of position that he seemed to drift in and out of what the reality of VALIS was, seems to me to make it all the more believable that he actually experienced something.
Oh, absolutely. Some people thought, oh, he just made it up. He's just being, he's confabulating. No, he did have an experience. His daughters agree. A lot of well-known psychiatrists have looked at it and they say this is not a schizophrenic psychotic episode. It's too coherent. Let's look at it this way. I mean, how many people? If you look at, a lot of people also like to say, "Oh no, he just frontal lobe epilepsy or temporal lobe." So what? So that means that Joan of Arc can be dismissed. Napoleon can be dismissed. Saul of Tarsus, who became Saint Paul. The whole Julius Caesar. A lot of these top people had, maybe the epileptic fit may be a kind of a signal for a larger information download that cannot be handled. So I usually don't like to attribute someone's attribute someone's experiences to just simply physiological in nature. There is always going to be a physiological correlate, but that doesn't negate the experience itself. Now, one thing that I want to give Phil credit for is his insistence on critical thinking, which is literally gone by the window these days. So people either believe whatever it's said by the CNN, New York Times, or whatever's on the alt media. So the alt media is great when they themselves are part of the disinformation. So you've got to develop a strong critical eye to discern what's effective and what's not, or what's useful, what's not. So it's not just, oh, I'm a New York Times reader and I buy my physical New York Times every day and I feel great about it. Well, that automatically you're removing maybe about 50% of the information you really need to know. Or I'm a subscriber to some alt channel and YouTube, and everything they need, CNN, it is all garbage. So either position is too extreme. So you want to be able to use your critical thinking to absolutely decide for yourself. And that means a lot of it. Use your brain for a change. It's not just um, believing whoever pundits. Remember, there's always an agenda, whether more eyeballs or more money. And so you got to make that decision. And Phil's, to his credit, did question his experience, whether it was a psychotic break, whether it was a communication from God or some sort of the Holy Spirit, or was some satellite orbiting. And that's really is to his credit. I mean, he could have maybe someone else would have found a religion or created a religion as a result of that. So I think that there is a lot to be said about his experience and the relevance. See, still a lot of these quote unquote PKD scholars are just obsessed with Phil, but they don't take a step back and look at the larger context in which he lived, and other peers of his that also may have similar experiences. And there are various Gnostic Christianity, the way it was practiced by some of the sects, suggested that through a series of words or incantations or passwords, we can go ascend up this level. But in that sense, PKD's Gnosticism is different. It's not about some classic word that you just utter. No, it's about using the powers of compassion or powers of humanity to break out of the shell of this black iron prison. So he warns against the use of the powers of the world to get out of the world. To say, okay, the revolutionaries will become the new tyrants. So for him, the idea and the void comp test in Blade Runner is suggestive. The capacity for empathy is critical to what it means to be human. So he never failed to really explore that humanity, but within a larger context in a way that anyone can understand, not just some hardcore philosopher. So that's what makes, in my books, makes it special. And also because he had to write so quickly. And his writings by no means is that great. I mean, they're easier. Asimov is much easier to read and follow. But what you get with PKD is almost like contact with his unconscious. It's like a little bit like you might get with reading Joyce. It's like contact to contact. And I remember when I started reading Ubik many years ago, for a couple of pages, I started feeling a buzz in my head. It's like something had entered my mind. So it's not just from the words themselves, the way the words are come out, because those words are probably, they just came out of his unconscious. So it's his unconscious talking to my unconscious. So that's how at least I engage with his reading, because certainly by orthodox literary writing, he's by no means even close to that. I mean, a lot of the words are kind of wild and strange, but you need to frame it like say you read Pynchon or read Joyce through a different lens, rather than, I'm going to read Heinlein, or I'm going to read Bradbury, or I'm going to read Asimov. Well, that's fine, but it's different from PKD.
There's something transformative about PKD, especially his later novels, I think. Like VALIS, to me, could almost be applied as a philosophy or a cosmology or a way to view the reality that we exist in. While most science fiction doesn't reach those type of philosophical or spiritual heights, there's something about Dick at his best that makes us feel that or at least for me, that after I've read him, I've been transformed, that I'm closer to some kind of truth, or I'm closer to understanding something which is very important to understand.
Oh, I agree. I think his writing, just I was rereading VALIS. I read it just like 3 or 4 times, and there was always new stuff that come out of it. Like the first time I read it, I said, who is Horst Fat? It's just very confusing, I said.
Right.
Then I understand. And I realized, but no, this is different aspects of himself from a third person perspective, second, first. It's like, and he's at one point he's talking directly to the reader. So it's like different positions he's taking to kind of represent what he experiences. And at one point, there's a moment in VALIS when he's talking about Parsifal, Wolfram von Eschenbach, and this is a very interesting moment. He talks about when time and space, where time becomes space, and that's when I started again thinking about this idea that Jean Gebza talks about. The part of the obsession with time that we experience in this day and age has to do with the decay of this final structure that came into being in the 14th century, called the rational mental structure. You could say almost like the left brain working on steroids, and the right brain has gone out the window. So the way Jean Gebza communicates that it's at some point there'll be a catastrophic shift in consciousness that may not necessarily lead to it may lead to many people passing away from right now we're experiencing the birth pangs of this new consciousness. And by the way, Gebza by no means was a new ager. So he was talking about this way before New Age was coined. In fact, he was very careful. He did have a couple of mystical experiences, Jean Gebza, but he didn't want to talk about it for fear of being ridiculed by academics. So, but his writing is worth reading. A lot of Americans haven't read his work. He's more known in continental Europe, and I think his magnum opus, which is Origin, the ever-present Origin, was translated as late as late 1970s. So a lot of people are not kept up with this. Very interesting, some of the stuff he has to say. So it's understandable that a lot of people may not be aware. But the latest research in left-right brain information coming out of Ian McGilchrist suggests that this transformative event that's about to take place may be an integration between the left and the right brain at a higher level. Again, that's all I'm just conjecturing here, so may or may not be the case, but there seems to be going in that direction. So it's an exciting time to be alive, and it's an exciting time to be really promoting and getting, PKD more than ever. I think more and more people want to get into his works. Back in the day, when I first started in 2012, I would say, well, how many people have read the books? And very few people would answer. But now I'm noticing more and more people actually going back to the source material. Not just, I just saw Blade Runner. So it's good to know, because that's really the source material is sometimes very different from the movies, or just unfortunately.
You just encouraged a regular listener to the show, Flat Rockland. He just said, I just ordered VALIS. You're not going to be disappointed, Flat. It's fantastic.
Oh, VALIS is a ride. It's definitely a ride. It's amazing. So it's one of the, and we were just, in fact, I had a discussion with one of our programmers a few months ago. Who would be a good director for VALIS? And we really had to think. I mean, maybe if he was a little bit younger, I don't think he could do it now, but Alejandro Jodorowsky, maybe. There's a possibility. Jerry, was it the director from 12 Monkeys? Gary, what's this?
He's
Terry,
the Monty Python director, right?
Yes, he might at his peak he might have done it. He would have been good. Yeah, there are only a handful of directors who could potentially keep the philosophical implications of VALIS, without sacrificing, butchering it. So I'd rather not have a movie that is going to butcher it, because that would be a shame. It's really a profound exploration of interaction with transcendence.
My good friend Kerry Pryor, who's a feature director himself, just said Terry Gilliam, so he gave us the name of the director.
That's it, Terry Gilliam. He might have, at least on his prime. I'm not sure how he would do it now, but at his prime, he might have been good for VALIS, because you want to keep the more subtle elements. I mean, So, but in the meantime, I can't blame Hollywood. In fact, credit Hollywood for at least getting the words out. And there's certainly been a lot of movies that borrowed heavily from PKD without, mentioning him, like The Matrix, for instance.
I was about to ask you, can you talk a little bit about the influence of Dick on that movie? I remember when it was released, I had a friend who, this is before I'd read VALIS, actually. It's the reason I read it. He said, because we were talking about The Matrix, and he said, it's just Philip K. Dick for dummies. And then I was like, well, I better read some Philip K. Dick then. So that's what made me read VALIS.
Exactly. I mean, The Matrix is, when I first saw it, I got it right away. I mean, it's just like they took PKD and they on steroids, with the action sequences and the 360-degree shots and so on. But at the end, at least the philosophical premise in the beginning, after a while, if they forget about that, is very much inspired by PKD. And a lot of people may be aware of a YouTube. You can get it on YouTube, of 1977 talk that PKD delivered in Metz, France. It's the only time he went to Europe because he was terrified of traveling. But he talks about we're living in a computer-generated reality, and I see different realities, one superimposed on the other. It's almost like diaphanous vision, which is what John Gebza talks about. So he. It's an interesting. It's 1977. It's worth definitely watching. I mean, when he talks about that, he's very serious about that, and so I think it's important to keep reading him and really keep working with him and understanding. It's very transformative because it forces us to come to terms with what it means to be human. More than ever, we need that, because a lot of the brightest minds that are coming out of college what are they doing? They're going into computer science. And what's happening to the humanities? That's being, in some instances, they're not even being funded. But you need to have humanities to humanize technology. Otherwise, it's just going to be this cold, soulless object, which is used to manipulate things, which is very much a left brain process. I mean, I would encourage anyone who's not familiar with Ian McGilchrist to check some of his videos on YouTube. He talks about that heavily, and he's very concerned about how this left brain tyranny is going to lead to our extinction at some point, unless it's checked. So his book is The Master and the Emissary, or Its Emissary, and it's very interesting. He kind of revisits the whole left-right brain argument. It fell kind of out of grace back in the 80s, thinking, oh, this is just pop psychology. Nobody's going to take you seriously. Come on, the left brain being masculine and the right brain being feminine, and it's all. But he's revisited. Now he's introduced some concepts which were not in the original interpretation of the left-right brain division. It makes sense. So more and more, especially as you look at the way writers, people, let's say, for instance, Alfred North Whitehead, which most people never read. He talks as process and reality. He says that everything is process. But that's very much what physicists are talking about, right? They talk about things. Particles are not particles. They're just they're just processes. These are just potentials. So what we're seeing is a convergence of what the physicists are discovering in quantum mechanics with the philosophers, with the old, our cherished religious tradition, into something unique, something wonderful. But in PKD, in its later years, was it reading up on left-right brain differentiation. And I'm sure if he'd been alive now, he would probably agree that something is maybe have to do with a reintegration of the left and right brain, at least happening to some people. So there's a lot of cool stuff that rather than just look at the work of one writer, notice how that work is a reflection of his contemporaries, and also of a larger legacy of philosophers, scientists, theologians. They're all talking about very, very similar things, a transitional state of consciousness. And it's exciting. That's what keeps me going. I mean, our films at the festival are basically, I see them as a sneak preview into the future. films. For instance, we have a dating film in this festival called First Sight, from the UK, and it's about a dating app that kind of is used to distort the the brain of the user to the point that person start thinking that their date is someone else. We've had, for instance, last year we had a feature called Creepbox, which essentially was about a way to recreate our past ones, or the ones who passed away, so we can continue to have conversations with them as if they never died. And that, so that the concept of grieving as a natural human process is abolished, even though, and currently Microsoft and other companies are exactly doing that. They're creating these avatars that will very soon have digitized memories of some of the people that are our loved ones. So we'll be able to interact with our friends who passed away, or our parents as if they. And so the concept of closure, which is so important to being part of a human being, moving on, will not exist. So this is kind of the destruction of our humanity, which is, unless it's checked, is going to lead to some very strange people in the future. You know.
There's so much. Again, I could talk to you for several hours, Daniel. You're just a fascinating human being. When we were talking about before about the influence of P.K. Dick on science fiction, like the Matrix series, obviously, of films, but we were also talking about how the idea of us living in a simulation had been suggested seriously by popular scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and certainly Elon Musk himself has been very serious about the idea that we aren't living at base level reality, that the chances are we're deeper in, we're further along somewhere below base level reality. In other words, simulations are created within simulations within simulations within simulations, kind of like the idea of it's kind of infinite regress, I guess, this idea that it just keeps going and going and going. But what do you think the influence of people who are in positions of power, i.e. Musk today, and people with that kind of throw in the media and in technology, that they are starting to look at reality in a way that P.K. Dick was suggesting in the 70s and that the Gnostic Christians were suggesting in the first century? Do you think people who are in those kind of positions are actually adapting this philosophy, is having any impact on us, or is going to have any impact on our culture?
Well, I'm not. The way they're acting, what they're saying versus what they're doing is radically different. I mean, Neil Tyson does mention the simulation, but he is an extreme reductionist, a materialistic reductionist. So you won't catch him talking about any kind of transcendental entity or being that. No. And everything can be reduced to science. So even though they are going along with this new fad, which I think that's what they're falling for, including Musk. Because if they really did believe that there's a simulation, they would try their best to get out of it and not to get deeper into the simulation, like in the case of Musk with these neural links. If you think this is all a simulation, then maybe what your goal is to break out of it, not by just creating another simulation.
Right.
Perhaps now you're connected to an AI system that tells you. So I think that there's a divergence between what they're saying and what they're doing, and that might be inspired by what's cool. I mean, and again, they're not taking it far enough. If they do believe in a simulation, then they should really start contemplating God, which is some scientists don't even want to mention because it's not cool. But most people on this planet do talk about it and think about it, though maybe privately, especially when their moment arrives. And then maybe I should. Well, it's too late. I mean, and they feel that being connected to a higher source automatically imprisons you. No, it's the other way around.
Agreed.
If you're just in the simulation, then you're the effect of the simulation. Now, if you believe that there is an uncreated being, whether it be, the names may be different, then you might more likely to surrender to that being and be able to at least briefly escape the influence of the simulation, but not by creating more things within the simulation. For instance, the early Christians, many of the early desert fathers, they were tired, they were disgusted with ancient Rome, and they walked and they lived in the desert, eating scorpions, hanging, living in caves, and really developing their spiritual world. So I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I think that there may be some, there may be some, there is some wisdom in recognizing that all the trappings of materialism ultimately lead us to a dead end, to a cul-de-sac. Yes, it's nice to have money, it's nice to have these things, but at the end, whether you're a Buddhist or you're a Christian, it doesn't matter. At the end, you become then the master of that rather than the other way around. For instance, Elon Musk has hundreds and billions of dollars. Why isn't he sharing that with creating, not necessarily giving it away, because I don't believe in giving it away, but going into communities throughout the world and really building good, affordable housing, or helping with the homeless, or helping. I mean, what's the point of sending rockets to Mars? Do you think he's going to be part of that? I don't know. But I would say that a lot of them are not really walking their talk. And ultimately, you need to, whoever you would decide to follow, it should walk their talk, not just talk nice and sound like you're cool, and then back off and when the moment changes. So I think PKD was someone that walked his talk. I think that if you see someone back in the 70s, he would have his apartment was open to everyone, whether it be a junkie or the latest writer. So in some ways, he was like, you would see some Christian character from the first century, right? He was not a drug addict. It was not like he just hanging out doing nothing, but he had a very, from my readings, certainly in his home, he was very hospitable. He was very neurotic outside that. But you get a sense of the kind of conversations he would have had with these people where at this level, I mean, like, the nature of reality, ontology, epistemology, how do we know what we know, and so on. So there, I do think there's a lot of truth in that, and a lot of these people are just, I think that by now their money their influence, their power has corrupted their thinking. So again, Musk might prove me otherwise, but so far everything he's doing suggests that he's still pretty much a believer in, not a believer in the simulation. He's believing what he's doing here, and what I think what PKD and other writers really point to is that our latent powers that we can use, or rather practices that we can use to break out of the simulation. We don't need another app to do that for us. What we need to do is go back to, say, meditation, or back to praying, back to fasting, back to things that the old ones used to do, whether it be Plato, Pythagoras, Jesus, Buddha. It don't matter. Yeah, people are doing that? No. Give me the latest app. That's falling into the Black Iron Prison in my book. Black Iron Prison is not just political. It's economic, social, cultural, religious. It keeps a person a cog in the machine rather than a free-thinking human being. So, but for those who have eyes and those who have ears, they will be able to see through. There's so much information out there, just at the tip of your on the internet. But you don't just go and TikTok, the latest TikTok craze, but do something that's a little bit more empowering to the person.
I agree. I agree with so much of what you say, and I do think that so many of us fall into being a cog in the machine. It's so easy today to, you get up in the morning, you clean your teeth, you have your coffee, whatever order, and then you commute to your cubicle and you work your 8-9 hours, and then you come home and you binge Netflix and you go to bed and you do it all over again. I think that VALIS, if whatever VALIS is, may be similar, and PK Dick himself suggested this, not in this capacity, but in his exegesis, he suggested that the UFO phenomenon sometimes behave the way VALIS did. It's only a throwaway line or a throwaway paragraph in there,
Right.
And I often wonder if paranormal phenomena that people experience isn't in some capacity like VALIS, in that it lets us know that there is more to our reality than living that cubicle kind of lifestyle, living that cog in the machine lifestyle, that these intrusions into our reality, whether it's a Bigfoot or a UFO or the Blessed Virgin Mary or VALIS or a ghost or whatever it is injected into this reality to make us consider that there's more to this universe that we live in than perhaps this black iron prison that we're trapped in, perhaps this day-to-day grind.
Well, I agree. I think there is the UFO phenomenon, which we've been fortunate to have Jacques Vallée back in 2017, and Al Puthoff, who was involved in the remote viewing experiments in 1972, 73. There suggests something is happening. But just like all these different beings, or the UFOs or cryptids, or you got to be careful on how to connect with them, how to engage. They do suggest there's a more complex reality, but one thing a lot of these experiences, there's a tricksterish quality to them, and you have to ask yourself, what is the point of that? Is that just to illuminate us or to pull us into something else? So I think a lot of people who are into the UFO phenomenon get stuck in that. It's almost like another loop of deception, not quite deception, but it's like it's sort of a off the beaten track kind of thing. So there was a writer, a traditionalist, originally a Christian, then he converted to Sufism, Islamic Sufism. His name was René Guénon, and he again he's very rarely studied, and he should be, because he was 20th century metaphysician, and he came of the school of thinking that all the traditional religions, whether it be Shinto, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Vedanta, they all basically are on the same path. They all point to the one. But the one difference is that each religion has to be followed to its entirety. That is, you gotta say it's just like you're gonna learn a martial art. You don't just learn one day karate, another day aikido, another day boxing. You got to learn one thing, and then just once you achieve mastery, then you understand how all the arts are very similar to each other. And what Guénon warned is that as the and this was back in the 1920s, as the world becomes more materialistic, the spiritual realities above us and below us will start to harden, and because they harden, there'll be fissures, literally fractures on both sides of both realms, the upper realm and the north and the lower realm. And from these, you'll have these beings, whether it be UFOs or cryptids, breaking through. They're not meant to be here, but they're broken through the hardening of the culture, the materialistic hardening of the culture. So you could argue, well, it has to do perhaps with a reaction by the right brain to the hardcore left brain materialism. That's one way to look at it. Another way is from a cosmological, ontological point of view, is what René Guénon was saying is, no, the spiritual realm exists, and the infra realm also exists. And really, when you have these entities crossing over, they're doing so because of the hardening of those realms, of the separation of the realms. Whereas back in perhaps in a different era, you could, using traditional religions, you could climb up those realms in a safe way. But right now, a lot of people get duped. So I think the whole UFO and paranormal phenomena is very interesting, but you have to be, like anything else, you got to be careful, and how that pulls you in. What is the message of the whether it be of the UFOs or of Sasquatch? That's what is the message, and sometimes we don't get enough. It's just like a tease. But all the traditions, whether Native American, to talk about it, the Wendigo and In Australia, you got the Aboriginal culture, which has been virtually wiped out, and they're very interesting. It's a very interesting kind of mindset, the Dreamtime world. So it's important to really, that's real diversity, to keep these people aware, because once they're gone, there's a wisdom that will be lost. So of course they'll say the Dreamtime will always be there, but it's important to keep these people, like whether here in the U.S., where the way we've treated the Native Americans, and a lot of them, the reason a lot of them many of them have problems with drinking is because originally there ways to achieving ecstasy, but that has been shut down by the world they live in. So now they resort to drinking as a kind of a default way to access those ecstatic states. So, yeah.
There's been a terrible homogenization of culture, I think. In some ways, it's good that we have, technologies that help us and, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, I think when you start to lose regional and traditional identities, it's a very sad thing for us as human, you know what I mean, to lose these different experiences, these different ways of looking at things, particularly given the fact that modernization, again, there are some blessings that come in modernization, but there's a whole lot of problems that come with it where we forget those deeper stories, whether it's the Dreamtime or whether it's Ireland's fairy faith, which anybody who listens to this show regularly knows I'm super interested in, or whether it's any older cultural esoteric traditions. They just get kind of forced out when all anybody is doing is living is a cog in the machine, as you said, and literally in the black iron prison almost of our own making by throwing these things overboard.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that that's happening. I also want to add a little experience I had myself a year or so ago. I do keep a record of my dreams, and back then, I remember one night I go to sleep and then I wake up. Well, I have a dream where I'm in some kind of in some place that's surrounded by all these temples. So in the dream, I'm thinking I am like in first century Greece or Rome. See temples everywhere. So I'm walking about, and this is before I really got into the whole VALIS way of thinking. I'm walking about, then I look at the sun, and from the sun, a beam, I see a powerful yellow beam that hits me and knocks me out. Then when I get knocked out, I wake up back to reality. So when people, now this is way before I got into the whole VALIS speculation. So it might very well be that he had a kind of that PKD's experience was a dreaming reality that comes into awakening to his own reality. So there are various, it's not, his experiences by no means singular. I think we all have these experiences. Many of them are so weird that we just shut them down because they're not consistent with their identity. But the key is to open up a little bit and be able to understand the diversity of the cultures and how they carry a certain wisdom. That's once the cultures disappear, the wisdom disappears too. So it's important to really maintain them, make sure they're kept alive and respected. It's very hard in this day and age when everything is reduced to dollars and cents and so on. But as I say, the empire never ended. It is not just a political empire. It's a corporate empire. It's a spiritual empire. It's a place where we really need to be very sly in order to break out of this entanglement of this information.
Maybe the Buddha is in the park, so maybe we're going to be okay.
I'm sorry?
I said maybe the Buddha is in the park. Maybe we're going to be okay.
Yeah, no, I think there is hope, and Phil always kept it. He felt that the VALIS was, at the end of the day, his conclusion was a benevolent transmission, and it was a way to helping us return back to our home, our original home, which I think a lot of us feel that we're being cast out, especially in this day and world where this is a soulless wilderness. But for him, and he believes it's going to get probably worse as you have these corporations that really take over. They try to But these characters within these corporations are always fighting back. So the idea of having this kind of warrior spirit to keep everything alive is essential, and not be duped by the late. And I would say technology is a lot more insidious than politics these days. I mean, politics, so you can see through, and you can at least have technology. A lot of people love it, and it's so convenient. It's so convenient. I mean, and why not? Why meditate when you can just hook up on Calm, for instance, or some app that's gonna just resynchronize your brain waves and so on. So that's the idea. Through convenience, we're led down this path, not through terror. It's easier through convenience. That's the seduction of technology, and
Agreed.
corporations are aware of that. So, Philip, the one thing we like about our festival is it's entertaining, but we also is a kind of a warning shot, a warning call. It's a sneak preview into the near future, not 10,000 years of like say Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. We're not that far away. We're supposed to be 20 years from now or 50. When we started out in 2012, even then the talk of UFOs is a bit of a tinfoil speculation, right? And a time travel, but almost every single issue that back then was regarded as, speculative sci-fi now is taken seriously. Even the idea of time travel. One of the scientists we interview in our festival, his name is Ronald Mallet, has found a loophole in Einstein's field equations that would enable, in principle, to be able to send a particle back in time to the beginning of the experiment. So say at 12 noon, you get your machine running, right? And at 12:30, you send a particle. You get the particle sent, and the particle sends out back in time in 12 noon. So you might say, well, how do you know that time travel has happened? Because the radioactivity slows down, according to him. That's the signal, which is kind of paradoxical in nature. But he's trying to get funding for that, and he's having a hard time. And I suspect that's not for a reason. It's because there's probably some governmental work on time travel, or some sort of work on time travel. But genetic engineering, UFOs, just about anything right now even the simulation seems to be open for season.
Indeed, and Lord knows with the black budgets that exist, what things are being looked into. I have to very quickly say thank you so much to Kenny Hess for becoming a new channel member on YouTube. We really appreciate that, and without people who become members and the like, it's very hard for this network to continue the way that it does. Daniel, you were an absolute joy to talk to tonight. I'm so excited that my film, The Shaver Mystery, is playing as part of the Philip K. Dick Film Festival. I hope that your festival continues for decades to come, because it seems it's so important. It's been, again, as I've said, a festival I've been aware of for a long time now, and I've thought just seems to do amazing work in this space. Again, maybe let people know how they can be a part of it, how they can see the films, and where everything's screening and what website they should go to.
So the easiest thing is go to the website, the Philip K. Dick, Philip with one L, philipkdickfilmfestival.com, the Philip K. Dick Film Festival. And there you'll get all kinds of links that take you to the online, PKD, the unseen realm, or the live. It's set up in easy to follow way, so you can either watch it, get it on your phone, or on your laptop or tablet. It's very easy. I hope to see some of you there. And Dean, definitely, absolutely. If the next time around we do another festival, definitely, hopefully by then you'll be able to join us. I mean, every year is a challenge, because we are in the middle. We are in the center of the matrix in New York City. We're not exactly a lot of, but here where we need to fight to keep the spirit alive. So hopefully we'll be around for another, couple of years. But and I hope to see you maybe next time around.
I would love to come to the festival. It's been on my wish list for many, many years now, and I'm so bummed that I can't be there this year. But thank you so much again for coming on, Daniel. You were a great guest.
Thank you again, Dean. It was really enjoyable.
It was great. You're fascinating. And if you want to hang around after the show, I'll still be able to say goodbye to you. But until I talk to you, Daniel, again properly, and until I talk to everybody else out there, please keep it weird.